So let's talk a little bit about the subject of bullying. First of all, it's very common that many neurodivergent kids and adults will experience some level of teasing, taunting, or bullying as they grow. Kids with ADHD or who have a learning disability or are on the autism spectrum will likely find themselves as victims or aggressors at one time or another. And children and teens who have trouble reading social cues and understanding social interactions, either because they're internally distracted or they miss them or they just don't understand them, may not realize when they've crossed the line from gentle ribbing into full-on bullying. Interestingly, the roles of bully and victim tend to be pretty fluid. Kids who feel insecure or different from others are at one time can become aggressors at another and then victims again at a different time. Children and teens who are neurodivergent may become easier targets for aggressors due to certain behaviors that they tend to exhibit, such as impulsiveness, clumsiness, social anxiety and awkwardness, not understanding personal space, violating others' boundaries, or struggling academically. For kids with ADHD who already wrestle with impulse control, emotional regulation, and social nuances, it's especially important for them to understand the differences between teasing and taunting and learn the limits of appropriate and undesirable behaviors. One thing that's happening in the ASD world is really trying not to use the word inappropriate because it's really taking a neurotypical sort of frame and applying it. So instead, we want to think about appropriate and undesirable. Now, so what is the difference between teasing and taunting? Well, teasing is a light, fun thing you do with friends or family, people you care about, that has no malice. It's not aimed to hurt people. Taunting is a form of bullying. It's something you do to someone you don't like. It is intentionally harmful and involves humiliation, cruelty, or bigotry. In teasing, you are laughing with the person. In taunting, you are laughing at the person. Teasing is often done with humor, it's reciprocal, it doesn't affect self-esteem and will stop when it's no longer fun. Taunting, on the other hand, involves ill will and continues and even escalates after the recipient is hurt or asks for the taunting to stop. So an example of teasing might be, you wake up, you have bedhead, you come down to breakfast, your brother's like, wow, your hair looks really vertical today, and you start laughing. You're like, yes, I know, I don't know, it's like a cone, an upside down cone. So that's some teasing. Taunting would be like, your hair looks so stupid, no one is going to want to be with you. And be your friend. That's different. And siblings do this to each other. They will taunt each other to hurt each other or to try to, demonstrate superiority, etc. So let's look at some of your comments around this. Okay, Sherry, good to know. Some of what we type needs to be screened unless people aren't worried about the details being in public. Okay. I believe that Attitude Magazine, and it's either Annie Rogers or Melanie Watchman, are reviewing the posts so that you can feel safe. Let's see. Diane asks, is taunting is bullying? Yes, taunting can be bullying because it's purposeful, right? Taunting involves the desire to hurt someone else, okay? It's something you do to someone you don't like, it's intentionally harmful, and it involves humiliation, cruelty, and bigotry. Teasing, on the other hand, is much more light and fun, and there's mutuality. With taunting, there is often not mutuality, although, if my brother told me that, my hair was hideous in the morning and no one would like me, I'd probably tell him if I were myself many years ago, I'd tell him to shut up and leave me alone. And if I were really honest, I might have said, well, no, you don't have that many. I have way more friends than you are, so who are you to talk? But that's just like lowering yourself to a level that is not helpful, and it's not your best self. So we really want to try not to do that. Let's see, Sonia, our boys start as teasing and then it leads to taunting. Yes. Is bullying to never invite that kid to a party? Or ignore them at lunch or at the lunch table or playground, feeling of invisibility? It can be, because there's different types of bullying, and one type of bullying, of course, is exclusion. Sonia, how do I help our boys to not let teasing lead to taunting? That's a great question, and we're going to come back to that. Marie, actually, I've been bullied so many times in school by peers that I became an aggressor at one point. That is so, really wonderfully honest of you for saying that. And this is what happens to a lot of neurodivergent kids. They're bullied, they're teased, they're taunted. They can't always reciprocate quick enough. They're the person who thinks of the right thing to say like 10 minutes later that they wish they had said during that moment. And so what happens is often the pain and the upset of being at the receiving end of these kinds of insults build up, and then someone will lash out on the other side. I believe bullying starts at home, in my opinion. It can. Diane, is there an age that bullying seems to get better, and what is the peak age range for taunting? Middle school. Middle school is really the time when bullying peaks. Let's talk a little bit more about bullying. So bullying is the intent to hurt or intimidate someone whom the bully perceives as weak, as vulnerable, and unable to defend themselves. It's you say something that's mean or nasty on purpose. Okay? It's a repetitive, purposeful, aggressive activity that is meant to cause harm or fear through the threat of future hostility. Bullying often takes different formats: physical aggression, hurting people physically; relational aggression, starting rumors; exclusion, spreading gossip; taunting, or getting people to gang up on others; social media, three-way phone calls, and group emails can perpetuate this type of relational aggression. And 24/7 digital connectivity can also cause someone to feel like there is no safe place for them. Carolina says, I've worked with my neurodiverse kids to use humor when teased in junior high so it doesn't escalate. Yep, humor is a great antidote for bullying. Angel, my boy 9, is blamable in class. His teacher is aware and doing her best to control it. Having a teacher who aligns with you and sees that you're struggling makes all the difference in the world. Have any of you had a teacher or an ally who was able to assist you? Rian, had family teasing me regardless and still saying that it needs to stop, as I think I have RSD. I understand that. Some people think their humor is very funny when it's actually quite mean and hurtful. And being related to these people is complicated. So does anyone have a memory or someone currently in their lives who is a support system for them or for their children when bullying is rearing its ugly head and showing up in your life or the life of your child? Betty says, bullying never ends. It is carried throughout life, right into adulthood and into the workplace. And I think that can be true, Betty. I think that adults can be bullying. Because they can be cruel, they can exclude, they'll make jokes at meetings that aren't funny but that put somebody down who's vulnerable. So what are some tools to help your kids respond to bullying? So if your child is being bullied, you can teach and support them with a variety of effective interventions. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I was told that the best thing you could do when someone bullies you is to do nothing. And that is not what the thinking is anymore. The thinking is that actually you want to encourage your child to speak up for themselves in non-provocative ways to assert some strength. We want to remind our kids that despite feeling picked on and perhaps isolated, they are not alone. Name their true friends. Name allies at school. Encourage them to spend time together. For younger children, facilitate these meetups. And for middle schoolers who are struggling socially pretty badly, many of them, and dealing with technology in ways that many of us did not have to deal with when we were their age, and they're not really necessarily developmentally ready for. We have to help them by inviting a family over, or having, a dads and sons, mini golfing excursion, or a moms and daughters, get your nails done, or movie matinee thing, or play mini golf or whatever, but what we want to do is try to help our kids nurture some of the friendships that they have. In general, I think the kids need two friends. One to hang out with, and another one if the first one is busy. 3 is ideal, but then there's someone else. But we also want to be aware that groups of 3 are very difficult for most kids. Groups of 4 can be easier, where everybody, can shift and have someone. There can be different pairs and configurations. So I see a lot of comments here. Let's see. Carolina, my kids were blessed with Mrs. Faulkner. Thank you, Mrs. Faulkner, who had a zero tolerance policy in her class. Loved her. Yay. Heather, I'm very proactive in my son's life. Right, and that means you're probably setting up activities for your son with hopefully some of the parents of his friends, where he can actually be social safely and comfortably. Carolina, doing nothing leads to more. Absolutely. Let's see. Betty, I was taught to say nothing too, but it didn't work. No, it did not work. Louise, my grandson was bullied by a teacher as well as other kids. Teachers are the biggest bullies in the school system. Oh my gosh. This is so upsetting to read. How horrible. I think teachers can be very impatient, and they can, perhaps, I guess what you're saying is they purposefully will put kids down. I would like to think it's unintentional, but I think when teachers are annoyed by students, particularly students who are neurodivergent and who have ADHD, they can really lash out in ways that are just not okay. Hi, Susie from Belfast. Welcome. Carolina, I frequently look at my son's texts to make sure they are okay. Sometimes they miss the obvious. Right, and that's something that you might want to talk about with your kids, because it's very different to have a conversation over text. There are nuances that are missed. There are nuances that are not communicated. I know for me, like if I have 2 friends and they want to make a plan to get together and we're doing it over text, I can do it for about 3 text strings and then I'm done. Like text exchanges, I meant, because I can't do it that way. Like, it's just not how my brain works. I'd rather get on a call with the 3 of us and just talk it out for 3 minutes than spend 20 minutes texting. So we want to understand, how we use social media and what works for us and what doesn't. And for a lot of kids, they don't quite understand the effect of the words that they're texting, because they don't see a facial response. There's an emotional weather report that is absent with texting. Susan, find your flock. Art classes, music classes, kids that like things that you enjoy too. I agree. Eva, welcome. Totally agree with you. I hate when adults teach kids to be nice, but not showing them what nice is. Okay. So let's go back to some ways that your child can explore some tools for responding to bullying. So one thing that can be really helpful is to help them engage the assistance of a true friend or friends in a socially tricky situation that could be a potential environment for bullying. So to discuss techniques and actual phrases to use to extricate yourself from an uncomfortable situation. And the way that you're going to do that is by doing some role plays. And I think the best thing is when your child is the bully and you can be your child. And then you switch and then you can parrot the words that your child said to you and let your child practice what they're going to say in response. You don't want to take the role of the bully first because you want your child to actually show you and say for you the kinds of words that they're hearing. So we're gonna one of the things that we want to think about is if you're in an uncomfortable situation, what are you gonna say? Oh, hey, all right, guys, you can look at your watch. I gotta go. I'm going to talk to my teacher before class, or yeah, I'm done with lunch. I'm going to go to the bathroom, or whatever it is. Like just to have a statement to say when you're leaving the table, and a statement to say when people are saying things that aren't nice. And what are you going to say that's actually going to make a difference? Like, don't talk to me that way. And the person's going to be like, well, I can talk to you any way I want. So we have to really, brainstorm with our kids what to say in kids speak, not what we might say as adults. We want to help our children or teens monitor their own behavior because metacognitive abilities, self evaluation is the last executive functioning skill to fully coalesce in the mid to late 20s. And many kids with ADHD or who are neurodivergent aren't necessarily aware of the effect of what they're saying or doing on other people. So they may have a look on their face, they may be doing something with their hands or their legs, tapping or whatever, that could provoke negative responses in others or may be seen in some way as aggression. So we want to build their self-awareness about things that they say, actions that they do, facial expressions that could be misinterpreted as hostile. And a good place to do this would be at the dinner table. And we can ask them to ask their siblings questions or ask you, what is my face showing you about how I'm responding to what you said? What is my body showing you? So we have to come back to this repeatedly with kids with ADHD and who are neurodivergent. It's important to talk with teachers that you trust, and it could be a school counselor, or it could be a nurse, or it could be the art teacher, someone with whom your child is positively connected, about facilitating social connections through collaborations at school on projects or having seats near like-minded individuals or a friend. We want to, work with the school, engage the school's assistants in fostering positive connections, and make sure that the school is aware of the social dynamics your child is facing. By the same token, if the school is contacting you about some of your child's behaviors that are not acceptable, becoming defensive and letting them know all the things they're doing wrong is not going to forge a partnership. And the goal here is to forge a partnership so that your child can feel, safer, right, and more accepted. So engage the school's assistants and listen to what they have to say. Donna says, teachers and school counselors tell the kids that they don't want to hear any drama. They get reprimanded if they try to ask for help. That's crazy, Donna. How to get fifth, sixth, and seventh grade girls to deal with bullying, name calling, rumor starting, backstabbing, and friends that are on and off when parent is the only guidance. I have to say that I find that they don't want to hear about the drama. That's what middle school is all about. Drama. So, one thing that could help is that if you know any of the parents of your daughter's friends, can you have like a potluck or a get together, or hang up a sheet and watch a movie outside or watch TV, something where you're building connections with other people who can then go with you to the school and talk about what's needed rather than you going by yourself, because a solo voice is going to be very different than a voice of 5 or 6 parents. Bullying, name calling, rumors starting, backstabbing, these are things that happen all the time in middle school. And girls in particular who are struggling with relational aggression, which is what these things are, versus boys who tend to struggle more with physical aggression, although they do have their own fair share of racial aggression, need guidance. And so school has to provide that guidance. And I assume that they have counselors at that school. So what can the school do differently? And if you don't get a response that you need from the school, then go up another level. Go to the superintendent's office. You're right. You are absolutely 100% correct. Because how we want to help our girls deal with that is by basically learning how to respond to it in ways where they feel empowered, and they're also not necessarily overly engaging in the process. Like that they have some responses and they have peers. And I'm going to talk about bystanders in a minute, because those are the key elements in bullying. Finally, we want to think about creating safety plans for our kids that detail what to do or say when bullying occurs in person or online. And these are kind of personal. Like I can throw out 7 phrases for you, but they may or may not stick because of who your child is and what you know about their situation. What would be better is to brainstorm together, or again, have your child's dear friend or best buddy and their parent come over and, bake some brownies and talk about, like, what do you say when this happens? How can you support each other? They're not going to come up with this themselves. They need help. This plan should include who to talk to, a friend or an adult, when something's occurring or right after, where to go at school for safety, the office or the nurse or the counselor, and what to do that is self-protective but not retaliatory, and how you can minimize reacting, which is so hard for kids with ADHD, because either they're just going to have that impulsive reaction right away, or they might be able to manage the reaction but their face tells everything. So you can they wear their emotions on their sleeve. Apparently that's what I do. So did particularly when I was a child. It's a little better as an adult. Obviously I've learned some things, but if I'm unhappy, you can tell. Okay, Diane says, my 12-year-old son, reacts so quickly and emotionally, he makes himself more fun to a bully. It's been hard to get him to calm down. He will go to tears very fast. So, Diane, in this situation, what I might suggest is that once he starts reacting, is he aware that he's reacting? And if he is, can he remove himself from that situation immediately? Because he needs to leave that situation and then cry somewhere else if he can, because otherwise the bullies are going to keep going. So he needs a phrase or two to say when he's starting to rev up, and then an exit plan. Sherry, I recommend we direct our kids to reach out to the correct people at school. Our kids need to talk with school counselors, psychologists for help regarding bullying. Agreed. And there are literally thousands of bullying programs for school districts to adopt. And so many school districts have them and some don't. So how can your school district be one of those that has it? Michelle says, my granddaughter is going to ninth grade. She seems to be less mature than peers. It seems her biggest social obstacle, this is her biggest social obstacle. Not that we want to rush her to grow up, but how to maneuver the relationships. Well, this is often so true for kids with ADHD because, you know, the maturation of their prefrontal lobes, it occurs with about a 3-year delay. And so they often are more, they often seem younger in some ways than some of their peers, and then they might be more mature in other ways. So the question is, you know, how do we help her understand when she's feeling lost, that things are kind of racing, and that's a very uncomfortable feeling for a kid to know that you've sort of lost track of what's going on around you. And some kids will just sort of pull in, and some kids will act out to try to distract from the thing that they've lost focus on. So we want to teach her how to understand when she is a little bit in above her head and what to do in those situations. Sherry says, reaching out to the wrong people is where a lot of those incorrect and unhelpful responses are coming from. I think every person on a school staff should know who to refer kids to and how to respond. Unfortunately, they don't. It's truly terrible, Sherry. Truly terrible. Let's make sure that your child knows who to go to, and we can start with that. Heather, I had a 13-year-old boy in my town end his life because he was bullied 24/7. We must always have open communication, always. Yes, and that's truly tragic, Heather. And one of the reasons that kids don't talk to adults about bullying is because they don't think, A, you'll understand, or B, someone's going to get in trouble. And so what we want to do is have some neutrality, like a neutral space where we're going to talk and listen, but we're not going to do anything necessarily, so that you have information that then you can reflect on and maybe consult with somebody about, like a partner or a family member or a friend, and then circle back and have a second part of a conversation about what to do. Courtney, I happened to be at my 5th grade daughter's with ADHD school today and witnessed a group of 3 girls surrounding her. I would say in a bullying manner, being mean. The girls were previously friends with her. Oh, God. They knew I was there and left as soon as they noticed my daughter look over to me and started crying. What advice could I give my daughter on how to get out of that situation? I think that a couple things. First of all, I would inform the school. Flat out. And secondly, does your daughter have any other friends? And if she has other friends, can she be with those people, at least one person instead of these 3 girls? And if those 3 girls come up to her, just to turn around and walk in the other direction, like, I don't want to be around you, to sort of symbolize that, but also not try to engage with them, because she might be trying to engage with them hoping that the friendship will be reconstituted, and it won't. All schools should have 0 tolerance for any type of bullying, and it should be taken very seriously. I agree, Javier. Susie, my 9-year-old has consistently been bullied by a member of staff at school. Oh, he plays football and they are put on a pedestal, but it's toxic and the whole class is tribal. It's horrendous. I've had 3 meetings with teachers. I'm really quite apathetic. Yeah, and also angry and despondent. I think that, I'm wondering if you can file a complaint against this person with specific details of these horrendous comments and treatments, so that at least it could go into his personnel file. Because I think if you're going to the school and you're not getting any support, then I might want to go above the school. Because the school is supposed to help you, not make you feel worse. All right, so let's take the last 15 minutes and turn to the people who empower the bully. So, we've all seen Mean Girls, and we know Regina had her little posse. And without the posse, Regina had no power. Martin Luther King says, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. So all too often, bystanders who witness bullying know that it's wrong, and they feel guilty for not acting, but they still don't do anything to stop it because they recognize that the bully is in the position of power. And even though they might be tempted to participate, if they actually do that, they could become the next target. And this is especially true for neurodivergent kids who may frequently find themselves on the receiving end of the harassment, or someone else is being harassed and they're relieved it's not them, but they don't sort of say anything to defend that person because they don't want the attention turned back on themselves. So what motivates bystanders to side with the bully instead of the victim? And most often it's fear. Fear of being hurt themselves if they defend the victim. Becoming the next target. Doing something that will make the situation worse. Not knowing what to do or whom to ask for help. And then getting a reputation as a tattler. So this last one is enormous. Nobody wants to be a tattler because a tattler will then be bullied, even more than someone who doesn't say anything. So it's really a no-win situation. When I was 11 and I moved and was bullied, my school days were terrible, but I went home and I had a break. And then I could kind of recover and regroup and, go to gymnastics or whatever I did, and then went back the next day. A lot of people don't have the chance to regroup because of whatever is happening online. And I'm not thinking less about elementary school kids, although there are fifth graders who have phones, but more about middle schoolers. And there have been some excellent documentaries about this. Diane Sawyer has had one called Screenwise. Anderson Cooper did a special called Being 13 on CNN several years ago. It's definitely worth watching. It's fascinating and kind of terrifying, but it does kind of give us a light, a light that it shines a light, there you go, onto what is actually happening socially among middle schoolers in particular, and on screens for so many kids. Many students are aware that there are better alternatives to being bystanders, and that's an important part of raising healthy, resilient kids. We want to make our kids aware by talking with them and showing them that there's something that's better to do than be a bystander. And so these prevention steps include welcoming others to join activities and groups that they're doing. Being a role model for what we call pro-social behavior, showing kindness, respect, and empathy for others. Walking or sitting with vulnerable kids who may be targets of bullying. I'm sure if you've had someone who was an ally, you know how important that is. And getting involved with bullying prevention efforts at school or in the community. So for people whose schools are not doing any bullying prevention, is there something in the community that's occurring? And if not, would you like to start one? Because there's all kinds of organizations, and I'm going to put some at the end of this talk, that you could connect with. During a bullying incident, a bystander or an upstander could defend the target of the bullying verbally or by physically standing near the victim. You may not need to say anything, but if you stand next to them, you're showing them with your body support. There could be a few people who are unhappy with what's going on, and they can intervene as a group. You could change the subject. You can question the bullying behavior in the moment. That is really hard to do. You could use humor to lighten up a serious situation. Openly state or object to the bullying. and state your approval of the victim or validate their social status in some way. When bullying happens afterwards, a friend, an upstander, can reach out privately to the target and express support or concern, to invite the target of the bullying to walk to school or class with them, or grab a cup of coffee after work, to report the bullying to a trusted adult, parent, teacher, or school administrator, to reach out privately to the person doing the bullying to express concern only if it feels safe and if it's not texted. Because if you reach out and you text something, that text could live forever. But if you actually have a conversation with them in person at school, hopefully moderated by an adult, that could be useful. And then enlist the help of other kids who also dislike the bully. There really is power in numbers, and so we want to help those kids be able to feel less alone. It's the loneliness that's so unpleasant for so many kids with who have been bullied. So there are a couple of organizations I want to put here. These can be helpful. Hold on, I'm going to put them in the chat when I can find it. There you go. And again, I want to offer to you my downloadable, which is here. And I'd like to take some time now for questions from you. Questions about your situation or something else related to bullying. Like what are some things that you've done that's helped, and what are some things that you still think, well, this needs more work? Bullying, to witness bullying as a parent is very, very painful. To experience bullying as an adult is equally painful, and I think it's really important that we come together as a community and really take away, what can we do differently? So let's take a minute and think about, all these things that we've talked about today. What's one thing you'd like to take away, to try, or one thing you'd like to do differently? Anybody have anything they would like to add on that subject? Because it's a small step towards changing the situation of the bully that actually will empower our kids and us in situations. When someone says something nasty in a meeting that's supposed to be a joke about you, you can say, that's not funny. That's a put down. Marie says, from a personal perspective, I've never had an issue in defending those who have been or are being bullied. I'll stand in any time if someone needs help. Good for you, Marie. Diane, I like the idea of role playing. Role playing is so important, particularly with our middle schoolers, to help them brainstorm what to do and how to do something different. Heather, how do we help our children stop whining? My son whines over everything, and he makes himself an easy target. Well, what is he trying to communicate with his whining? His whining is a behavior that he's adapting to try to communicate something that he doesn't like or is uncomfortable for him, and it's not super effective. So if he wants to create change, then he has to do something other than whine. And I'd work with him on some developing some other tools that could create the change he's looking for. Susie, just watching my girl's confidence go south. My girl is so worried about getting into trouble, but the telltale label is absolutely true. Right. So we really have to work with our kids, and particularly girls in middle school, on the things that they like to do and like about themselves. Otherwise, they're going to be using how long their Snapchat string is as a form of identifying themselves and what they're good at. And this is not actually particularly helpful for them. So we want to really nurture those strengths and talents. And if your child has nothing they're interested in, is there one thing that they're willing to do? One thing. And that's it. We're going to grow that. You're welcome, Heather. Let's see. Pauline, Eva, my 7-year-old ADHD son keeps lying and bullying his 3-year-old brother. When we call him out, he screams and gets full of rage. What can we do to make him not act so reactively? Well, it's really obviously not okay to bully your 3-year-old brother. And siblings will do this. And I think that when you call him out and he screams and gets full of rage, either ignore it, or let him know that every time that he screams or gets full of rage, he's not earning screen time. Then screen time is often something that kids want. So there are some family rules about how we talk to each other and how we treat each other. And I would sit down with your kids and say, what are the basic rules about how we're going to treat each other in this family? And what do you think the consequence should be if you can't do that? Let your son come up with some ideas about what should happen when he does this as well. You're welcome, Heather and Georgia, Carolina. Give him an alternative way to phrase and express, validate his feelings. It helps. Yes, he may not be able to, I agree with you, Carolina, that he may not be able to articulate what's going on, but he needs another outlet for whatever emotion is underlining to be articulated. Diane, I'd like to encourage my kids who do well socially to keep reaching out to others. Agreed. Hopefully someone will encourage their child to reach out to my son. I hope so. Maybe you can invite another child or two over to your house to get to know your son separately outside of the school area. Susie, I'd love to set up a community group and involve kids. They surely need to see us adults model healthier behavior. Agreed. And I think in some communities, starting a bullying prevention program in the community will then force the schools to get on board.